A conversation with Donald Byrd. So how do you decide what process you want to start next? Um, like how do you decide what idea you want to start exploring? Where does that come from?
I don't know. Usually there are a lot of ideas percolating around, and I just pick one.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, sometimes, like with the PMB piece,
Hmm.
I was really interested in that music
Hmm.
and uh, the story behind it from the composer's story behind the creation of the music. And I had known him. I met Emmanuel in 2011 in Jerusalem, and so he was just kind of interesting to me. And but his feelings, well, he's kind of interested in me, so I was interested in it. And then uh, when I saw him, I was in Tel Aviv 3 years ago, I think it was, and he came up from Jerusalem uh, to see me in Tel Aviv, and um, he was just sadness around him, and so I asked him about the sadness. Why you feel sad? What's going on? So he told me why he was sad, and then that music was a result of that sadness.
Wow.
So when it came up uh, to do something at PNB, I go, well, maybe this is an op because the music can be live. I can,
Hmm.
like all of those things. And so maybe I want to, and I haven't done anything like that.
Hmm.
I hadn't done anything like that for a while, that kind of work. And, and, and it was in contrast to the work that I do at Spectrum. And so that idea about love and loss was fascinating to me. So we decided uh, to that I would do a thing where I would just invite a certain number of people in, and then we just kind of uh, work, and then I'd see, and I would pick two casts from those groups of people, and then, as you know, I gave people the option, like, if you don't want to be here, that's fine. I don't hate you, and so, but I just need to have people that are interested
You're
in doing
willing.
it. Yeah, huh? Are
Yeah.
willing, yeah, to go through whatever this is. So that's how ended up with the 22 dancers. I was glad to. I think
Hmm.
it filled the stage, and
Hmm.
also it meant that everybody didn't have to. Uh, that in some ways you could get to the audience could really learn even though it was big. The audience could really learn the people. You
Yep.
know what I mean? Get to
Right.
know them. So, but the my point was that I think it gave a even though there's some of the hierarchy of ballet was in there, classical
Mhm.
kind of structures was there. It also gave it there was opportunity for people who were in court of ballet to actually be featured a bit, and I like that.
I love that. I think it also created in the studio created an interesting dynamic um,
Mm.
because we were all just kind of grouped together and your choreographic process, you like assigning a lot of tasks and making us rework a phrase. Um, and it was cool to see because obviously I did that with you when I was doing the solo, but seeing my colleagues, work in a different way mentally and physically it was really interesting.
Yeah,
And I appreciate that we had a choreographer that came in and pushed us, as a group and not just as individuals. But
yeah,
you wanted to see what we were like as a collective,
yeah,
which I think is important to showcase for a ballet company. It's not just about the solo dancers. It's about the energy the company brings,
yeah.
to the stage and how that comes to life.
And I think what I saw was once people understood what was going on or what was attempted, they just kind of took it and ran with it. And I like that I like that very much, and I enjoyed it. And I felt like I got to know the dancers, each one of the dancers really. In a way that I had not known before. I mean, some of the things I go, oh, okay, that's how you are, like that. But some of it, but that's okay. That's part of they who they are as a person, and learning to accept that about, and that brings something to what's going on the stage.
Part 2, on Donald's work and experience being an artist of color. After coronavirus, do you think your work is going to shift again, or do you think, I mean, it seems like it already has because you're already working on stuff from your
Yeah.
home, but
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, it definitely will shift. Uh, some of it, the direction that it will go and how it will go about doing it, I kind of have some ideas about, and working, setting up a way that I can do that.
mhm,
But obviously, I think much of it probably is unknown how it will shift. I mean, I think one of the things that there are two things right now that I'm kind of like grappling with this idea is the pandemic itself. When I think about like all the people that are dead, not just the people that are infected, but the people that are dead um, around the world and here. And I remember thinking earlier on that in some ways we don't really completely get the picture because we don't see the bodies piling up,
yeah,
and how we could then, so in some ways we are not as compassionate
mhm,
as we ought to be, and we are not as afraid as we ought to be as well.
yeah,
And because we don't see those bodies, we don't see the evidence, and so uh, we kind of have to believe it, you know. So there's that, and I'm interesting how it's a tragedy, how that tragedy will work its way into my work in terms of the humanity of it, because that's a deep uh, uh, tragedy. The pandemic is a deep tragedy for humanity,
mhm,
and I feel like I want to address that because it's central to that is the notion of how do we connect with other people, and uh, and how do we have compassion for other
empathy too.
empathy, yes, all of those things.
Mhm,
How do we uh, and those things kind of cross uh, uh, issues of race and ethnicity, color. Then on the other hand, there is the current issues that Black Lives Matter has kind of pushed to the forefront of the American consciousness,
mhm,
and which in some ways is the opposite than the other one because it's about specifics, about a specific kind of disease in our society
mhm.
that affects a particular group of people. Uh, and so, uh, what does that mean for me? I mean, I think, as you know from the work I've been doing, I've been addressing that anyway,
Yeah,
you know, and so. Uh, does this mean that more people will address it so that I can back off a little bit? Kind of what's the next thing for me to address? As I said to somebody in an interview last year, sometime I said, well, I think race will always be, my being Black in America will always be a part of what I do.
mhm,
So it's not like a trend. Right now it's good for Black Lives
yeah,
Matter. No, that's a worldview that I have that I perspective that I need to address. But I can say, or I will say that, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I want to say that my experience, my being Black, I said gives it focus. Uh, it centers it. Maybe that's a better word. It centers the work that I do. Whether it's about being Black or not, it still is an element that's there that centers it. It's a
it sounds
perspective.
it sounds almost like being a male Black choreographer. It kind of grounds you almost. It
Yeah,
like it puts you back into like this realistic, like we are humans, you know. It's putting you back into a reality state of art.
yeah,
Um, so it's not just kind of, you know, art is not just a fantasy. You know, you're
yeah,
using it as a fuel. You're
yeah,
using it as a way to make a statement and to highlight different aspects of a community,
Yeah.
which, I mean, we have needed that for decades and decades and decades. Um,
And I think it exists in the literary world. It just doesn't exist. I mean, it does exist, but not to the degree. I mean, the dance world, not to the degree that it does into the
yeah,
literary world. When people write plays, they write novels, they write stuff about stuff that's real and that
mm,
is urgent
yeah,
all the time. In dance, we tend to. I mean, it's interesting you use the word fantasy because my friend Thomas France, who is I've worked with as a dramaturg, he's worked with me as a dramaturg often, and he actually curated the exhibition at the museum,
oh, cool.
and he was talking about this notion of fantasy and the role that it plays for, and I'm not going to quote him, I don't want to get it wrong, but so I won't quote him, but the discussion around the role that fantasy plays in why uh, black uh, why black dancers want to become ballet dancers.
Mhm.
That there's something about the fantasy of the ballet because the ballet perpetuates fantasy in some ways, you know.
It's a dream-like state that you're kind of watching, and you kind
Yeah,
of want to be a part of too as a
yeah.
dancer.
So even if you're doing an app like it's harder in abstract ballets, which is why they're less popular, I think, for the public because they don't allow you to be in a fantasy.
It's
But for the
not force
dancer,
fed.
huh?
It's not as force fed when it's abstract. Like the
Yeah,
audience really likes they like work that they identify quickly. Um, I mean, it's just kind of a testament to the short attention span that is continuing to decrease. As we're getting more generations. Like more people want things very quickly, and they want to be told very quickly.
yeah.
Um, but how do you think in the dance world? How do you think we can continue showcasing diversity in dance specifically? Like you're saying, it's something that's not really done as much.
Yeah. I think, I mean, if you want to showcase diversity, then you just have to make sure that there are diverse people doing the work, creating the work,
before before
running the companies, directing the companies that are integrated. That's a terrible word, but this way integrated inside the organizations uh, at every level. And it has to be a commitment to doing that. And it shouldn't feel like it's uh, one should be excited by that as opposed to thinking it's like an ordeal to try to have to make that happen. And also to understand that it doesn't happen. It's not like things, like the way white people say to people, like you need to go a little, say to black people, you need to go a little slower. Yeah, we understand, but not like that. But it does take time. It's not going to happen instantly. And so, like, the thing is that white people are in this moment in terms of engaging with Black Lives Matter and the current situation around police brutality and stuff is that people white people can be well-meaning, but their perspective and how they internalize stuff is not going to change overnight. It means they have to constantly work at it. I mean, they have to think of themselves like an artist or a craftsman, is that you keep working at it. The more you do it, you get better at it, but you have to keep working at that thing.
it takes
So I'm
practice.
a much better choreographer now than I was 10 years ago and 10 years before that. And I've gotten better at it primarily because I do it all the time. I do it, some people wait. I don't wait. This is the longest I've gone without completing something. I've been working on something, but I'm usually like spit it out.
Yeah.
So, so my being black and the experiences of black people and my connection to them has actually given my work focus,
Hmm.
you know. Um, and all and sometimes it is, and so working, the thing about The Color Purple, for example, that I was really interested in, it's not like I had this huge desire to do a Broadway show, but I had a desire. I was really curious about the idea of how do you make a Broadway show that at the center of it is racism, at the center of it is incest, at the center of it is domestic abuse.
Mm.
How do you make a music? How are you going to sing about that? You know?
Yeah.
And so I was just really curious about that. That's why I wanted to do it, about how it was that going to be done. And also that it seemed scary and almost an impossible task. And so then I wanted to be a part of it.